it's very interesting, the Venus Pentagram, because there doesn't seem to have been an enormous amount of knowledge of it in modern times. It would have been well known to the ancients because of the gearing that they used in the Ptolemaic system, but in modern times it seems to have first appeared as a diagram, as far as I'm aware, in the back of an astrology book in about the early 1980s, I think. I saw it there. It also appears in a book by Joachim Schultz, who was the astronomer to the Steiner movement, and I saw it in that as well. Became very interested in it, and I was lucky enough to have grown up on a machine. My grandfather was a sort of bit of an inventor, and he built a machine for me when I was a boy called a harmonograph, which is a machine with pendulums and pens and a table, and a harmonograph draws visual pictures of musical intervals, is how it works, and simple harmonies, which in music sound nice, are also generally made of very simple fractions. And it was my first sort of real realization that simple fractions produce nice pictures, and you're also seeing pictures of musical harmonies. The Venus 5 is actually produced in space from a gearing in time between the orbits of Earth and Venus. Every 8 times Earth goes around the Sun, and Venus goes around the Sun 13 times. So Venus and Earth their periods are in the ratio 8 to 13. They're both on pretty circular orbits. Venus, in fact, has the most circular orbit of any planet in the solar system. And so this 8 to 13 in time manifests as the difference between those two numbers in space, which is 5. So another way of looking at it would be to say if Venus and Earth their periods were in the ratio, let's say, 7 to 12, you would also get a 5. But it's interesting that we have these numbers 8 and 13. Every 8 times Earth goes around the Sun, Venus goes around the Sun 13 times. And if you look at those three numbers, 5, 8, 13, the really fascinating thing about them is that they are the three numbers most used by life on Earth, which is an extremely strange coincidence to my mind. It took me a very, very long time to realise and be able to state that very simple fact, as simply as I've just said it. I mean, it was really only in the last 3 years, having been doing this for 20 years nearly, it's been only in the last 3 years that fundamentally simple connection between our closest neighbour and the numbers it's beating out in the sky around us, and the very close relationship that has to life on Earth has become really, really clear to me, and how strange that is. I don't know why it took such a long time. It was when I was working on the book The Golden Section with Professor Scott Olson in Florida that he sort of made me think a lot and showed me a lot of books about phyllotaxis, which is about the way plants grow and how little understood it is really, and just how widely spread 5, 8, 13 phyllotaxis is. You do get plants showing 21 and 34, the higher Fibonacci numbers, and even 55 maybe in sunflower heads, but most plants on Earth are doing 5, 8, 13, and our closest neighbour is doing 5, 8, 13. Seems to me a very, very strange thing, and I think it's just emerging into human consciousness at the moment, so I'm doing everything I can to popularise it at the moment. It seems to be a very, very simple and very beautiful example of as above, so below. There's obviously no physical reason why a planet doing those numbers should either be there in the first place. There's no physical reason why those numbers should be there, and there's no reason that those numbers being there is in the motions of Venus should actually influence or affect the way plants grow on Earth. But the connection there does seem to be. When science can't explain something, they dismiss it as a coincidence, and it is dismissed as a coincidence. And I rather like the word coincidence, and I use it a lot in my work. The most obvious one of all is the Sun and the Moon. So it almost goes without saying, it's so obvious and so huge that people forget about it. But the fact of the matter is that we have two very large balls in the sky moving around this planet, the Sun and the Moon, and they are almost exactly the same size in the sky as seen from Earth. And that's another extraordinary coincidence. If you think of the enormous distances involved in space, how hard it is, how unlikely it is that a ball the size of the sun, which is very, very big and very, very long way away, should be able to cast, there should be a body, our moon, that can get in the way of it, exactly the right distance from Earth to cast a shadow only a few miles wide, a dot, a few miles wide on the surface of the Earth. It's an extraordinary coincidence that should be the case. We live in we're bilaterally symmetrical. We have a left and a right side that are the same, so we're bilaterally symmetrical life forms. Our species is divided into two sexes who are equally well balanced, and the fact that our two primary bodies in the sky should display such incredibly beautiful symmetry is really food for thought, and most people don't think about it. Again, it's just a coincidence. It's called a coincidence because there's no material science that can explain how it might have got there. So that's another very good example. The one I've been working on for the last 14, 15 months now, a new piece of research that came to light in about May last year, and involves ice halos, and which are rainbows that you see around the sun. You see them on a still afternoon. If you look, there's about 3 a week, so if you can see them quite often. If you know where to look, you'll see a little spot, rainbow spot, to the left of the sun, to the right of the sun. And I first discovered that, looking into those, that the angle created, the most common angle, they do move around a bit depending on the ice crystals, but by a very long way, the most common position to see a sundog is at 22.5 degrees. 22 degrees, known as the 22-degree halo, but the sundogs themselves are slightly outside. 22.5 degrees from the sun is where sundogs lie, and I happen to know from my own work on the solar system that 22.5 degrees means you're looking down the arms of an octagram, and I knew that an octagram defined Mercury's mean orbit around the sun. So I became really quite intrigued. This was a couple of years ago, this bit actually, that I cracked this. So for the last few years, 3 years, I've been walking the dog in the evenings, looking at these two rainbow dots, thinking, well, that's amazing. That's where Mercury is. It's just painted for us in the sky, where Mercury's mean orbit is. Mercury's wobbling around a lot, but its average orbit is exactly there. And then it was last May that I saw a full, what's called a glory, where you see two rainbow circles round the sun, and it has this little kind of mercurial moon-like thing on top of the outer one. And I looked up the data on it and found out that the outer halo is known as the 46-degree halo. And again, I knew from experience that 46 degrees is where Venus's distance from the sun. So Venus is basically, the furthest Venus ever gets from the sun is 46 degrees. So when you're looking at, if you look at a circle that's 46 degrees from the sun, you're seeing Venus's sphere, Venus's orbit around the sun, painted for you in full perspective, exactly as it would be if you could see it. If it was a ball rather than if you sped it up and just let it draw itself as a ball, then you're actually seeing it drawn in light and rainbow light. It's just unbelievable. So you've got the two. There are only two planets between us and the sun, and they're both, their orbits, their mean orbits are precisely drawn for us on Earth as rainbow circles. The really extraordinary thing about this result is that there's absolutely no science that can really explain it. If you think about the Venus 5813, you could imagine some sort of Newtonian resonances that could bring that about. Or a lot of the other bits of geometry and harmony in the solar system can be caused by resonance over long periods of time. In fact, it's well documented now. But this result is really very strange. It's a bit like the sun and the moon thing, that you can't really think of how it could have got there except by being a coincidence. Well, if it was happening once, then that would be one thing, but it's happening twice. In fact, it's happening the only two times it can do it. It's so symbolically accurate a representation of what's going on that it really does make you think, well, how could that have got there? What are we living in? There's something else going on, and possibly it's something to do with us. It's not going around any other planet. It's going on for things with eyes on the surface of our planet, same as the sun and the moon. Even if you're living at the centre of the Earth, the effect wouldn't work. It only works from the surface of the Earth. It's quite an extraordinary effect. And it makes one think quite deeply about some of the ideas in quantum mechanics, which is like the observers render their reality. the idea in quantum mechanics is that it's only by the act of observing something that the wave function collapses. It gets rendered, a bit like in a computer game when the computer only renders the bit of the world that you're looking at. Very much the same understanding of reality in quantum mechanics at the moment. But if you think of an entire planet full of beings with eyes, all seeing these two circles around the sun, they're going to think to themselves, there's something there. There's something there. And lo and behold, over millions of years or whatever, sure enough, that's where the orbits are. I think there's some sort of reverse temporal causal game going on. It's some sort of holistic strangeness that you know, all the evidence we've got points to there being an effect. But it's purely speculative. I'm not a professional scientist. But what I like about this is it's very, very simple. It's really thought-provoking. It's never going to go away. You're going to keep on seeing these for the rest of your life, and every time you see one, it makes you wonder. You get a strange feeling, and I think it's yeah. We've been very excited about it. A small team that we'll group of us that will think about these things. So they're the main ones, I think. Those three. There are lots of others. There's things involving Saturn and Jupiter, and golden section being knocked out. But the thing that seems sort of eerie to me is the extent of focus on Earth of golden section based relationships. I mean, there's bits of geometry going on around Mars, there's bits of geometry going on around Jupiter, Saturn. You get fourfold things, sixfold things. You get a nice 1, 2, 3 in the periods of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which is mirrored in Mercury's 1, 2, 3. 1 Mercury day is 2 Mercury years, during which time it's rotated on its axis 3 times. That's mirrored in the outer bit of the solar system between Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. But you know, we are essentially fivefold life forms. We're living on a planet full of things that are alive, and the signature of life are the Fibonacci numbers, and the number 5 particularly. And what's really strange is that all of the geometry in the solar system, the only place you get this abundance of fivefold geometry and golden section and Fibonacci geometry is all focused on Earth from our neighbours. It suggests that if life is defined by golden and Fibonacci numbers, then it suggests that the entire solar system is really alive around Earth as well. It's not just, life isn't just happening on the surface of the Earth, there's an extended sort of biosphere, if you like, involving our neighbours too.
So when the ancients were talking about the Earth as being the center of the universe, were they correct in some?
Yeah, I mean it's an odd thing, isn't it? If you try and think how could it get there? If you take something like the sun and moon being the same size in the sky, how would you orchestrate that? If it's not a complete fluke, you just for a moment just entertain the fact that it might be engineered in some way. Well, okay, it could be engineered by ETs or something. But the only other way and how would you engineer a solar system to have a 5/8 gearing so that the planet which ended up evolving life had a 5 going on around it? How could you possibly engineer that? Well, either it's going to pop out through standard Newtonian resonances. There doesn't seem to be any evidence for that being understood, how that could happen yet. Or you're talking about an intention, maybe at the moment of the sun. I mean, how do you make it so the 5/8 is going on and simultaneously you've got these rainbows all working? I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So it's almost as though the whole thing's being held in imagination in some way. So, yeah, I mean, I do think it makes you seriously wonder about the nature of the universe. I think in terms of Earth being the centre of the universe, I'm not so sure. I think I've got to the point, my thinking about it over the last year really, which has been very intense really, since the isolas thing came through. I think that as far as I would like to go at the moment is to say that I would expect on any planet, anywhere in the universe, or any planet we might later find with life on it, that you would also find very, very unlikely beautiful geometries going on around it. I think consciousness, or the eventuality of consciousness, maybe it's reverse temporal, or maybe it's sort of holographic in some way, but I think planets with conscious life on it, like beings with eyes, are going to create effects which we currently don't know anything about, and those effects are to make things more symmetrical, more beautiful. It's a real chicken and egg thing. You can't tell which came first. Did the consciousness come first, and create these effects, or were these effects created in some way by an intention at the moment that the solar system was formed? Which brings you back to mind. What is an observer? What is a mind? What is it to observe something, to hold an idea in mind? What is that really? And then these new models of the universe, where it's really being modelled as a big plasma universe, which really does resemble a brain, you know, in all but scale really. Then you begin to sort of wonder really what we're living in, and what is a mind? What's our mind? What's the mind of the local cluster? What kind of signals and thoughts are travelling around this system? And might it in fact be possible to imagine something like our solar system before it appears in that mind? Might that be how this all happened? Might that be why, in fact, sun and the moon are timed? They weren't always the same size in the sky, but they are now the same size in the sky, just as consciousness is peaking on this planet. So everything's kind of flowering, everything's set up for now, for this period of whatever it is, 500,000 years that we're in at the moment, with a species peaking in consciousness and evolving very quickly, because we're living in this incredibly beautiful bit of symmetry, which very, very few people are aware of, and yet you cannot dispute it. No one can back you down and say what you're saying is complete nonsense. They might disagree with your conclusions, but they can't disagree with the facts. So, yeah, whether it's focused entirely on Earth, I don't know, but it certainly seems to be from here. I think our consciousness will continue to evolve way beyond 2012. I think we've got a long way to go, and I think consciousness will be unrecognisable, you know, in 2,000 years' time. So maybe it's some sort of defining moment. We're certainly coming alive as a planet. The internet's an extraordinary thing, but at the same time, you know, psychic phenomena are probably decreasing as a result of the internet. The old days of, you know, old Welsh, you know, there's an old Welsh boy who lives next door to Robin Heath. He used to wake up and get out of bed and go down to the station and meet his sister off the train every now and then. He'd never get a phone call. He'd know his sister. He just would know his sister was coming that day. He'd know to go there. That's the old state of human mind. You can say that with our mobile phones and with the internet and everything, we've replaced these innate psychic skills, which actually may be the long-term destiny of mankind, is to become much more evolved psychically in terms of our mental fields and activities. And at the moment we're in a very high-tech, but actually quite low consciousness. You know, so there are some sort of, we don't know where we're going. 2012 certainly represents, in the wired planet. That's what it represents. We've moved into this state of the wired planet. Whether that's our future, really, that kind of consciousness, I don't know. It may be that the two meld, and we all know little chips inside us and everything, which is what a lot of the sci-fi guys think, where they think we're going to merge with the technology.
Hope
but
not.
there are other people that think absolutely that's really not real evolution at all, and that we will evolve in other ways. But evolution will carry on, and I don't think it's going to stop in 2012. Myself.
Okay, so
It really does look like a brain. I mean, it's using electricity. I mean, the plasma theory is not being proven yet. It's still left field. It's still a left field theory. I mean, my prediction is that it will become the mainstream theory. In 20 years' time, people will not be talking about dark matter anymore. There is no dark matter. You know, I'm fairly convinced plasma theorists are correct. But even then, you've got, you know, a lot of people struggling away with the old gravitational model of the universe, and they get very good results. And we don't know which way it's going to go, and we don't know which of these guys are right. But if I had to put money on one of them, I'd put money on the plasma universe. It seems intuitively correct. And what's the point of inventing a whole load of stuff to make your equations work? I don't think the plasma theorists have to do that. And the plasma theorists, the interesting thing about plasma is that it behaves holistically. So it behaves as a single thing. I don't understand very much about it. I'm not a plasma theorist or plasma cosmologist, but it is the fourth state of matter. It's relatively recent in its definition, a bit like electromagnetism itself. And I think those kind of things will take over from this gravitational model, really, because it's the whole of modern cosmology is really still based on gravitational theories at the moment. So it's still kind of things whizzing around things, and gravity being the main force. But electromagnetism is a force 100 million times stronger than gravity, and we know that space is full of plasma. There's 99.5% of the universe is plasma, and we know that plasma filaments in the presence of electromagnetic fields. We know there are electromagnetic fields everywhere, so it isn't a very large stretch of the imagination to see that all of the clustering and clumping you get in the galaxy clusters, the reason that you've got everything filamenting out in space is because there are great big invisible electromagnetic cables connecting everything. At that point you really do have something that resembles a mind. And of course you've got things firing, you know, lighting up just like neurons all the time. It's it's eerily similar, and it's very, very, very big. So it could easily be having thoughts at some different rate or something. I mean, you can only speculate. It's good fun to speculate, but it probably, you can't do things like that if you're a mainstream scientist. So you never hear it from mainstream science, because they get fired if they even entertain ideas like that. And of course they're terrified of what they now call an overmind, which is the modern word for the G word. So they're terrified by it. For some reason it's so completely not trendy to talk about consciousness. I mean, Richard Dawkins thinks that this is about as clever as devices as we get. It's the human mind. It can't even make a stretch to the idea that society might be a kind of brain of its own. So they're really, there is this sort of difficulty in the sciences at the moment that they're really being able to entertain. I think really some of the more interesting ideas terrify them, and so they end up with the multiverse. If you think of the anthropic principle, which is the biggest conundrum in science, which is this fine-tuning in the universe, where all the fundamental constants of physics seem to be so finely tuned that if you change any of them, even about 0.1%, then nothing works in the universe. You don't get a universe that can produce life forms like us. In fact, anything really beyond a bit of a mess. So the entire universe is ridiculously finely tuned. It was at the moment it was born, whether it was born a long time ago, very long time ago, like the plasma theorists think, or whether it's still relatively young, which is the Big Bang model. The jury's still out on that. But whichever is true, you're still left with this big problem of how come it's so incredibly finely tuned for life. Where does that come from? And if you look at the difference between the answers to that and the mainstream science answers that by saying, well, there are lots of different universes, and we're just lucky to live in one where it's all finely tuned for life. That is a bit of a cop-out. That's a bit like saying that the reason you end up with a rabbit running around your lawn is because somehow it sort of happened, some genes happen to be in the right kind of way, right kind of order to produce a rabbit. Well, it's a stupid argument if you ask me, but our Astronomer Royal, President of the Royal Society, put it forward as now the gospel answer to the anthropic principle. And you get more interesting ideas like James Gardner's biocosm theory, and he reckons that this fine-tuning is an inheritance from previous successful and very highly evolved universes. So universes give birth to other universes, and they pass on this incredibly beautiful fine-tuning that makes things like us highly probable in those universes. But then you also get kind of other ideas, like the quantum idea is very interesting, because quantum computers will work very shortly when they're already building them, but the algorithms that they use are based on the superimposition of the qubit, and because a qubit is superimposed, then your qubit is a superimposition of lots of different numbers all at once, and so you basically, what a quantum computer does, it tries everything simultaneously, and the only answer that gets out of the gate is the right answer. So quantum computers work like that. Well, if that's the way quantum computers work, and we know the whole universe is a quantum superimposition, then maybe the universe just tried everything at once at the moment it was born and came up with the right answer. So that's another, the most perfect possible solution. So that's another answer. Again, that one's not very trendy at the moment. And then you get ideas like the overmind, or there's a big conscious sort of feedback, reverse temporal loops, and so there's a sort of sliding scale. It seems to me you've got these big problems in science, which they will all agree on, but you won't hear the more interesting answers in the mainstream. Except it isn't really. There's lots of people, there's lots of fragmented consciousnesses. I mean, if there was a sort of single vision, I suppose, then something extraordinary probably could happen. And until that moment, it's probably, you've probably still got lots of different minds, all with their different imagined universes held inside them. So that synchronicity of vision is something I think a lot of people have written about and longed for. Whether we're any nearer it now or not, I don't know. There's certainly something to be said for the whole planet joining up. So who knows? I don't know. I mean, fingers crossed we will get somewhere very interesting very soon. But as to exactly how that happens, I don't really know.
So you have
It's possible. I mean, I think in the end it's just good science to keep your mind open, and it's good science to look at the evidence in front of you. I think if we got to a point ever where the evidence, the body of evidence for a different way of looking at space and the universe than the current mass believed paradigm, if you could almost prove it, show it in a very, very clear way, then then yeah, maybe things would change. I mean, I just have no idea. I mean, who knows? So, but yeah, I think we could be getting closer to something. I mean, science could evolve in lots of different directions, and this is not necessarily where it will go yet. I mean, it could be like 500 years time or something before ideas like this become the mainstream. But it could be at the same time, it could be next year. So we just don't know. Maybe never. Maybe it gets taken over by an industrial military complex and it's all to do with nuts and bolts spaceships and complete sort of ravishing of the Earth's mineral resources, and people that think things like this will get rounded up and sent to loony bins. So we don't know. You know, the planet's been through some pretty difficult times in the past, and whether it's all going to be plain sailing, and whether more far out ideas ever gain. I mean, science. The last 100 years of science are very far out. That's what's interesting, really. It's gone very, very far out. You know, most people aren't even aware how far out it is. You know, quantum entanglement, what an extraordinary thing. I mean, in some ways, you know, the physicists probably wish that it wasn't going on. They keep on running the experiment again and again, but every time it's proven to be the case that faster than light entanglement of split photons is genuinely occurring. Really does occur. So what Einstein calls spooky action at a distance. You know, split a photon, move, you know, fiddle with one bit somewhere, the other bit can be in Alaska. It will automatically change its spin, react to its paired thing. And if everything's connected anyway, if everything comes from the same centre, then everything's entangled, really. But then you've also got this idea of local entanglement, things that are like the amount of entanglement in this room, photons coming from the light bouncing off the monitor or glass here are splitting the whole time. So you're going to have more entanglement and synchronicity going on in a kind of local environment. You get the synchronicity and the entanglement between people who've shared the same meals, you know, twins, people who've lived in the same house, and people who are related, shared a body at some point, mother and daughter, identical twins. So that's you know, you get those dogs that always know when their owners are coming home. Rupert Sheldrake's work, and so you can explain quite a lot of that through a mixture of mental fields and entanglements. But this is still really fringe science. So it's but my guess is that's that's sort of it must be where we're heading in some way. It's either that or it's just more and more and more tech. So. Well, there's one of our team who very much hopes that, and he wanted it to come out for Christmas 2012 and really blow everyone to bits. I really don't know if we're going to make its release for Christmas 2012, but I'm not sure that particularly matters. The Mayan calendar, interesting though it is. I mean, there's that John Major Jenkins thing about the galactic alignment. That the long count represents the precession of the equinoxes, but I think I'm right in saying it was 1999, which was when the midwinter sun was over the galactic centre. So the Mayans are they're only kind of 14 years out on their galactic clocks, not bad at all. And then you've got the Venus thing coming. They seem to be timed it for the Venus transit in 2012. So I've no idea about any of that, but there do seem to be things afoot, and we are trying to make a really, really clear and fascinating and clever film that you're just going to want to watch again and again and again and again without any kind of we're not preaching or trying to sell any point of view. We're trying to put all the different options in it, so we're going to have different characters representing different points of view, from a full skeptic to the most hippied out character you could imagine, and people in between. So I think it's I think the material sort of speaks for itself, and I think where you go with it's up to you. And I think it's really important to realise that the universe you think you live in really will define you, who you are, how you feel in yourself, and what you do with your life and your day, and how you respond to everything around you. And the cosmology that you inhabit is the house you live in, and you might as well live in a really nice one, I think. So that's what we're trying to explain. That's what we're trying to do. Yeah, we're trying to say, yeah, this is your home. This is what you live in. You know, there's so many films made about the Earth and all the rest of it. And there's these glorious pictures about the solar system that show sort of volcanoes and spinning dust clouds and everything. We're trying to show the proportions and the music and the sheer level of coincidences and oddness, all focused on us, and the amount of beauty focused on us, really, and trying to get people to absorb that, really, without selling anything at the same time. And
Yes.
it's really important not to have we're not selling a religion or a cult or we're not selling fuzzy science either. We're just selling, in the same way you might have the Mona Lisa sold to you via a good art history program. Someone really explaining why it's such an amazing painting. We're just trying to explain. We're going to try and explain very carefully, very simply why it is just absolutely extraordinarily amazing what's going on in our neighbourhood, and how focused on us it is, and how inexplicable that is, and how it's how if you think about it, you go places. It's just a matter of raising you up. If you think you live in a slum and you suddenly are aware that you live in paradise, you open your eyes and you realise that, then you do feel you're likely to feel better about lots of things. Members of our team for whom that's really the main reason that the film's being made. So I think we've all got different reasons for making it, but certainly there are certainly members of the team for whom that's the really important feature of it, is its ability to transform the people who see it. I'm more kind of, I want it out there for the record,
Yeah.
I want to get this science out for the record, really, and make it really clear.